Many of us are familiar with due dates, maybe even too familiar. They stare at us in our faces every waking hour, right? The projects, the bills, the schoolwork, the kids' field trip money. But I propose a shift in thinking. Instead of living in the marginless zone of due dates, DUE, let's flourish in the realm of DO dates. Let's get into it.
Equipping creative businesses to unleash their best work.
Welcome back to the Chief Creative Podcast. I'm your host, Dustin Pead, founder and owner of Chief Creative Partners. And everything we do on this podcast, as well as in our business, is all set to equip creative business owners to unleash their best work through operational efficiency. I know that's a lot of big words, but if you listen to more than one of our episodes or even just one, you're going to understand quickly what we're here to do, and that is to help creative business owners operate and function and flow in their businesses so that they can unleash their best work. So today we're diving into chapter 1 of my new book. We're writing this in real time. If you missed that, go back and listen to the last episode where we kind of walked through the introduction and laid out kind of how this whole thing is going to go. But the book is called, or will be called, Creative Work, 10 Systems That Every Creative Business Needs. And just a reminder, this is not an exhaustive system or exhaustive list of all the systems that a creative business needs. These are just kind of like the 10 most important ones that I've seen in my over 20 plus years of helping creative businesses do just that. And so today we're going to dive into kind of what I refer to often as the cornerstone framework or concept. And that is this idea of the do versus do framework. Now, if you're listening to this and not really paying attention, you might just go, did you just say the same word twice? Both of them sound the same, do and do. So what's the versus all about? Well, it's DO dates versus DUE dates is what we're talking about. And then, like I said at the top of this, a lot of us live in the marginless zone of DUE dates, right? And DUE dates come with limitations. They come with constraints, whereas DO dates, they come with margin and flexibility, right? DUE dates are super demanding and suffocating. But DO dates, as we'll find out today, come with grace and freedom. DUE dates, they're all about reacting, whereas DO dates is all about intentional, proactive responding. So I'm going to walk us through the formula here of this framework, and then afterwards I'm going to give us some real applicable how you can use this immediately, because everything we do from this point out in the book and all of my podcast episodes and working with us at Chief Creative Partners is centered, is kind of cornerstoned, if you will, on this do versus do framework. So let's start with the formula. It's a 5-part formula. And first part of the formula is this. It's super simple, right? When is the project or task due? When is it DUE? Now, unfortunately, we can't change the fact that things are due when they are, right? There's usually some kind of outside circumstance telling us, hey, this is when we need this by, or maybe it's even a self-imposed goal. Hey, this is when we want to have this thing completed by, right? So just like in Alcoholics Anonymous, our first step here is acknowledging the facts, right? It's acknowledging the fact that this thing, this project, this task is DUE on this certain date. And for our example, for this chapter and for this episode, we're going to use March 1st as our example DUE date. So first part of the formula, hey, when is it due? When is it DUE? Secondly, how long will it take you to do this task? Now, this is where the other do comes in, the DO. How long will it take you to actually DO this task or project, right? If it's a project with multiple tasks, then we're going to create a work back schedule from there, right? We're going to be realistic and honest with ourselves about how long each of those tasks may actually take. That's going to total up our DO time, right? This is no time for false expectations of yourself. You need to be super realistic. If anything, you'll learn that we're going to err on the side of conservative so that we can make sure we don't underestimate the things that we know and overestimate the things that we don't know. So in this circumstance, let's say the thing that we're wanting to do, the DO before the DUE, is going to take us about 3 days to complete, 3 full working business days, whether it's just us or our team or collectively or whatever it is. It's going to take about 3 business days to complete. Now, if we reference back to step 1 of the formula, we know that our DUE date is March 1st, which brings us to the third part of the formula, subtracting the time it takes to DO from when it's DUE, right? It's a simple math equation, right? If it's DUE on March 1st and it's going to take us 3 days to produce, right, to actually DO it, then you must begin DOing it no later than February 26th, right? We work backwards. March 1st it's due, so we're going to go back 3 days from there. We're going to go, okay, all right, February 28th, February 27th, February 26th. Now here we are. February 26th is when we should begin doing the work. Now, most people on workback schedules or working through timelines, they'll stop right there. They'll go, yeah, man, any idiot can understand that if it's due, then I need to, and it's going to take me this long to do it, then this is when I'm going to have to start DOing it, right? And operating in that way, I would say most creatives don't even operate that way. Most creatives just operate off of the DUE date, and they just go, I'll just find time to get it done before it's DUE, right? The more organized creative, the more successful creative, the more repeatable, scalable creative business, right? They understand that they need to operate off of DO dates, not DUE dates. And so really going through steps 1, 2, and 3, when is it DUE? How long will it take to DO this? And subtracting the DO from the DUE is super easy for most, right? But they still find that they're struggling in last minute constraints and they're still up against tight deadlines. And they're like, I don't understand. We did the work back. We went backwards here. We conservatively knew it was going to take us 3 days to do this. And here it is, March 1st. And we're crunching to get this thing sent out to the client because it's due to them today. So there's 2 additional steps here that I introduce in the do versus do framework that set it apart from just a normal workback schedule, right? And here's where we start to separate ourselves a little bit on step 4. So we've said it's going to take 3 days to produce, right? And so that's going to start on February 26th in order for us to meet our March 1st deadline. Nothing super innovative about that. But here's where it starts to separate itself is now we're not going to settle for February 26th because there's a couple things we want to consider here. The first thing is we're going to go back further, at least 25 to 40%, right? And here's why. There's always going to be something unexpected that pops up, right? It's just like Dave Ramsey says in his financial coaching. It's not if it's going to rain, it's when it's going to rain. And so for us, this is not a matter of if something's going to come up, but when something comes up that blocks your ability to complete this work that you have already blocked off and scheduled for. So if you don't plan and anticipate for the unexpected, your plan will inevitably be derailed. And you know this feeling. You've got good momentum. You get to the 80% mark of the project, and all of a sudden something comes out of left field that you didn't plan to enter into the equation, and now you're behind the 8 ball, and now you're going to be late for your DUE date, and you have to call and make excuses to the client about why the thing's not going to be delivered on time. And when those things add up over and over again, guess what? Client goes and finds somebody else to work with who can actually deliver on time. So here's what adding 25 to 40% looks like, right? So in our example, we're using that March 1st, right? And we're using the dates there that we set up in the first 3, March 1st. You should begin doing the things, right? We said February 26th. That's 3 days. If we add roughly 25 to 40%, like if we're just going to add let's say 33%, we're going to round off and we're going to add a whole additional day here for this. So now, instead of starting on February 26th, we're actually going to start on February 25th because that's going to give us that 25 to 40% margin of knowing that the unexpected will come. And for whatever reason, it always seems to come towards right at the end of the project and delays us from delivering on time. All right, so far, this plan, it works great if your calendar is completely empty and you work 7 days a week, but that's not very likely. So enter step 5. Consider your calendar. So when is it DUE? How long will it take you to DO it? Do the workback schedule and the subtraction of the DO from the DUE. We added the additional 25% margin, but we've got to also take into account what our calendar looks like. Our days are usually not free and wide open, and we don't usually work 7 days a week. So what we need to do here in step 5 is to consider our calendar. You need to consider working days and how full your calendar is, right? Do you work 5 days a week, 4 days a week, 6 days a week? Because getting something done is unrealistic when your calendar is full of other items. You know how that feeling is. You have your task list, but you also have your calendar, and you're looking at your task list and you're going, there's a lot to do today. And then you're looking at your calendar and there's a lot of meetings today. There's a lot of things I have to be at and perform at and be on at. And it's going to take away from my time of actually doing the things on my task list. And you're looking back and forth and you're like, I don't know which one to choose, my calendar or my task list. But considering our calendar helps us not have to choose. It helps us to work around the calendar so that we're not stressing last minute before something is DUE. So we'll need to go even further back now from the date that we set in step 4 to account for these obstacles, right? So, for example, keeping with our timeline, right, of March 1st, and we went back to February 25th through 28th, right? That's when we're going to actually DO it, right? If those days are actual working days, then you're fine, right? For the most part, at least the first part of this equation. Are they working days, or are you off any of those days? Do any of those days fall throughout the weekend? Also, are those days booked with items like meetings or soccer practice or other duties that you may need to attend? If so, you may need to move it to a work time of the week or to days that aren't already booked. And so we're going to adjust it further back accordingly. So for this example, let's say 2 of those days are non-working days of the February 25th through the 28th, right? 2 are non-working days, and the other is completely booked with meetings, right? That's 3 more days that you're going to need to go back, which brings you to beginning that task or project now to February 22nd. And that completes us through the do versus do framework. So when is it due, right? When is the thing actually supposed to be delivered, DUE? How long is it going to take us? That's step number 2, right? Now, how long is it going to take us to actually do this thing? Step number 3 is we're just a simple math equation, right? We're going to subtract how long it takes us to DO it from the DUE date, right? But we're not going to stop there. We're going to add 25 to 40% of margin because we know things are going to come in that we didn't expect. And we're going to account for non-working days or blocked days on our calendar or time that's filled up on our calendar with other obligations and meetings. And so now, instead of just stopping at step number 3 and going, oh, I can start it on February 26th and we'll have plenty of time. Actually, because of the margin that you accounted for and the calendar of non-working or blocked days in your calendar, we actually need to start it on February 22nd in order to have it done, DONE, by the time it's DUE. So now you have a better idea of when you actually need to start working on that task or project to complete it before it's DUE. Now, I want to give you a little pro tip hack here. If you're using a task or project management software and it always asks you to put in the DUE date, I'm going to challenge you to put in the DO date rather than the DUE date. Or if you'd like, what we do a lot is we put a DUE date as the main task, right? And then what it's going to take to get that DONE, to get it done, we will create subtasks for. So the main task will have our DUE date, and we'll put on it DUE proposal to new client, right? But what is it going to take to get that proposal to our new client before it's DOE to them? We'll list all those as subtasks underneath that with dates, with the proper person assigned to it. And those are now our DO dates. And so when we open up our project management software or system or legal pads or whatever you use, sticky notes, doesn't matter. When you open it, you sit down at your desk and you open those things up. You don't have to think about what's DUE. All you have to think about is what's DO. And right there in that moment, you can get the work DONE before it's DUE. So let me end this chapter in this episode with a real world case study of deadline panic to proactive production using this framework, right? So before implementing this do versus do framework, this particular client's creative agency was constantly in what he referred to as the firefighting mode, right? Projects were starting too late, and the team worked nights and weekends to get things delivered on time. And because of that, the quality suffered. But after a few months of trying out the do versus do framework, they really started to see a shift immediately, right? The weekend work decreased by 90%. The client satisfaction scores improved a couple of points from 7 to 9. The team turnover rate dropped to 0 because they're not stressed out all the time. And the project profitability increased by 23% because we're not wasting time. You see, the key to all that success was not working harder. It was working smarter by implementing the strategic DO dates that created the margin that they needed for creativity to flourish and thrive. And that's what this framework brings us. It all goes back to serve your creativity to ultimately better serve your clients. So that's it for this week's episode and the first chapter of the Creative Work book. Next week, we're going to get into chapter 2, which is probably the biggest complaint that I hear, or the biggest confusion point that I hear from clients all the time, is they don't know what's the most important thing. What should I be spending my time on? There's all these things that are vying for my attention. What are the things that are actually going to move the needle? So next week, the second system that we're going to install into your creative business is the priority framework. And we're going to take a couple of well-known tools, marry those together so that you know what gets priority each and every time. Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode of the Chief Creative Podcast. If you're interested in working with us at Chief Creative Partners, go to chiefcreativepartners.com and go ahead and click on our schedule a call button, and we'll give you a free 30-minute call to really understand your business and help you unleash your best work yet. Cannot wait to be back with you next week on the Chief Creative Podcast. Have a great week.